Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the models of democracy. When we are finished talking about the definitions of these models, you then are going to use the information that you learned to help identify these models in images or quotes in the next activity. Okay, so first of all, we need to define what a democracy is. According to your textbook, it is a system of selecting policymakers and of organizing government so that policy represents and responds to the public's preferences. And in our case, we select other people to kind of make these decisions for us because we don't have a true democracy, we have a representative democracy. All right, I'm going to take you now to a Khan Academy site. Here they have defined each model of democracy. These should look familiar because the bottom two were in your textbook in Chapter 1. The first one we're going to talk about is participatory democracy. It's a model of democracy in which citizens have the power to decide directly on policy and politicians are responsible for implementing those policy decisions. And so basically this is saying that every person has a direct impact on the government and the decisions that are made by the government. The second model is the pluralist democracy. We also are going to kind of group in hyperpluralism here as well, which was another term discussed in your textbook, which is basically just the pluralist model on steroids. So the pluralist democracy model is a model of democracy in which no one group dominates politics and organized groups compete with each other to influence policy. So it's kind of the idea that you have all these organizations that are really kind of calling the shots as far as government goes, and not one of those groups has more power than another, but they all kind of compete with one another for that power. And finally, the last one is elite democracy. This is a model of democracy in which a small number of people, usually those who are wealthy and well-educated, influence political decision making. And so the idea here is that there's a thought that maybe these incredibly wealthy people, because they have so much wealth and prestige, are calling the shots as far as decisions being made by the government. Remember too that these are theories, and so everybody kind of tends to cling to a theory that they most believe in, or even multiple theories, so you can kind of see how more than one theory could apply to a different situation. All right, so here's kind of giving us some background, talking about the founders, that when the United States was founded, the founders created a democratic republic, a system of government in which the power to govern comes from the people, but elected officials represent their interests. And we know that this is true. We elect our representatives, we elect our senators, we elect our president, we elect our mayor, we elect city council, our governor, all of that. And so we are generally okay with being represented by these people because we voted them in office. Okay, so that is how we allow ourselves to participate in government. The United States also has many different levels and branches of government that any citizen or group might approach. So if you're having an issue at the local level, you'll probably approach people at the local government. Many people take this as evidence that U.S. citizens, especially as represented by competing groups, can influence government actions. Okay, other people, though, kind of argue that that's not really the case, and it's much more difficult to have that influence. All right, so I'm going to post this link into the lesson for today. So make sure you kind of look through it and notice things like participatory democracy does not necessarily mean direct democracy. Okay, it does mean that you can participate in decision making, but it's not necessarily that you're doing it directly. Okay. Examples of participatory democracy, they talk about town hall meetings, anything where individuals are being heard on the individual basis. So it's a chance for them to have their voices heard and be understood and ask questions and things like that. Initiatives and referendums. So some places allow for citizens to initiate policy through petitioning, and then referendums are direct votes on particular policy. So, for example, in the state of Alabama, we do not have the lottery. And so if they wanted to have the lottery in our state, they would have to do what is called a referendum, where at the next election, it would be on the ballot where the individual citizens would be voting whether or not they approve or disapprove of that particular policy. Okay, so that kind of covers that. And then here again is the pluralist. Sometimes when talking about it on a greater scale, we talk about it as hyper-pluralism, where no single group dominates politics and organized groups compete with each other to influence policy. Examples of this would be like interest groups. That's probably the best example because we do have so many interest groups that really focus on particular areas in which they want to have advanced in government. And so those interest groups are constantly competing to see who can influence Congress or the president, or even at the state level can influence our state legislatures or the governor to make change in whatever area it is that they focus on. And then finally, elite democracy, which we talked about, wealthy, well-educated, kind of in the limelight, influential people. And examples of that are here when talking. It says, we can see the influence of elite democracy today in the structure of the Electoral College. Although the people popularly elect a presidential candidate, the Electoral College serves as a check on the potential tyranny of the majority. And so we kind of leave it in the hands of this very, very small and prestigious group to make this final decision for us. So that is all for Khan Academy. Again, that link will be on here, so you'll have access to that if you need to refer back to it. None of those theories truly exist in a vacuum. You could make an argument for any of those theories applying to different parts or decisions by government. All right, so here again, this is a quick way to get to those definitions if you need them. If you have questions, please feel free to email me at mhillis@jeffcoed.com. Otherwise, you may go ahead and continue on to the next part of the lesson.